Gary is here, and we are so glad you are too. Welcome to Playing the Field, a Bachelor podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Field, the sports anchor here at WABC in New York City, joined now by our normal panel of favorites, our Bachelor insider, Jen Matarese, also from here in New York, Gina Sirico, our Bachelor, we call her our Bachelor expert.
Yeah.
I feel like she has a new title every week. Bachelor expert Gina Sirico, who's back from jury duty and back on the podcast this week. We are so thankful about that. We've got so much to discuss this week, including new news that we are about to have a fantasy suite unlike any other in Bachelor history. We're going to talk about that. But first, drum roll, please. We bring in our guest of honor. Gary is here, our retired finance executive who's enjoying the retirement life in Palm Springs, California. Gary, my friend, how the hell are you?
Doing sensational. Not quite Palm Springs, Palm Desert.
Palm Desert, and how close is that to Palm Springs, roughly?
10 minutes. 10 minutes away.
We'll call it a suburb of Palm Springs, Palm Desert. That's what we'll call that. Listen, we've really, and by we, I mean me and Gina and Jen, and of course all of our Bachelor listeners, have so much enjoyed your journey as we watched it unfold throughout Joan's season. Both from a personal perspective and really, frankly, a spiritual perspective. Kind of give us a sense of what your life was like before this show and what it's now been like after this show.
Well, before the show, it was pretty quiet, pretty tranquil, pretty peaceful. Every day is a Friday, spending time with my my family at church, part of my men's ministry. Doing all the things associated with inspiring and motivating folks in our community here. Now, since the show,
catch your breath, Gary. I got a feeling this is going to be a good answer.
I just have to give you an example. I usually have coffee at the small coffee shop in Indian Wells, another little small suburb of the Coachella Valley. And I kid you not, there must have been about 8 or 9 folks that said, hey, that's Gary. Can we get a picture with you? And I'm like, sure. Oh my God. And the whole celebrity thing that's come with this has been quite amazing. It's been fun, but I'm also still trying to keep things in perspective.
That's a good way to be. And take us back to night one. What was that feeling like, being in the limo, coming out, getting to meet Joan? Can you kind of take us back there?
Sure. So night one was, it was like we were coming out of sequestration, no cell phones for the first 4 days, and no internet. We're in the limo, and there's like 5 guys who I'd never met, but we instantly gravitated toward each other, going on this journey together, and then we see Joan spotted in the courtyard of the Bachelor Mansion, and it was almost as if she was on a pedestal with the lights, and we just, oh my God, there she is! And it was such excitement to the point where I was happy that I danced my way up to her because it shook off some of the nerves, but then she had to point me in the direction to where the front door. It's like I got lost with where I was at. So that was the initial part of night one, and then seeing each of the guys come in with, Charles and the cane and the push-ups, and I think it was Bob that rode in on his horse, and we're watching like, you've got to be kidding, and was my entrance good enough? And then you start, comparing yourself to everyone else. But it was a pretty cool night. But it was more fun being with the guys, and then ultimately getting some time to spend with Joan.
My favorite, I think, date that has been through this franchise was the prom date. So Goldie and Sunshine forever. I love that. I love you guys. Talk to me about that date, because it just seemed like so much fun, and it just sparked so much joy as a viewer. So talk about what it was like in that moment.
So it was pretty special because it's like you're going back in time. Everything had a lot of nostalgia associated with the prom date, and Charles, who had never gone to a prom, and Jonathan, who didn't get to experience his prom also. So it was party time for all of us, but it was special for those guys. And for me, spending that time with Joan and us giving each other the nickname of Goldie and Sunshine, we got to pick out our outfits, and I wanted to keep the thing of the golden thing going, and I just happened to pick out that gold jacket and the gold tie, and it was pretty awesome. It was pretty awesome. So,
yeah, not as awesome as you going full Monty on the people during the striptease and just coming up there ripping your shirt off, and away we went. I think that might have been Joan's favorite part of this season. Is that fair to say?
I would probably say that was her funnest part of the season. Yes. They take us to these places. We have no idea what's happening until we get there. And we showed up. We go inside, and I'm thinking, okay, something's going on. And then when the Chippendale dancers came out, I'm thinking, there's no way. I'm not 25. I've got my, there's no more six pack here. It's like a 12. But it was for a good cause. And as it relates to the cause for cancer, we were all willing to step up and support and have fun doing that.
That was just, such a fun moment to watch, and everybody just let loose.
Well,
what was it like working with those Chippendales dancers? Were they nice? How was it?
They were pretty cool guys, but I got to tell you, they're in great shape for their age, especially the original guys.
Yeah, the OGs were there. That was cool.
The OGs, right? And they were in great shape. They're great, kind, guys instructing us on our dance. And of course, we blew that the minute the music started.
It looked great. It was so fun.
Oh my gosh, it was a fun time. It really was.
It's not about how it looks. It's not the destination. It's the journey, right? As I think.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Part of this journey for you guys, that we haven't seen in previous seasons, is that you've been able to talk to your families. Like, they've been kind of along through you got to talk to your son. Some of the others, Joan talked to obviously her family when her mom was ill. Other people, Mark talked to Kelsey. It's been a really beautiful part of this. Was it something you mentioned that, you had been sequestered for a few days? But is it something that, like, these moments with the phone, was it something that, like, you were able to have your phones with you and to say, hey, I'd like to talk to the family, or did they kind of plan that out?
Once again, a complete and total surprise. With the first call that they put together, the producers were just so creative with their concept of bringing our families into the fold. Because I'm used to speaking with my daughter at least twice a day, on her way to work, on her way home from work, and my grandson. So when they rolled the televisions out, we didn't know what they were doing. And then when our family showed up, it was really, really special. And of course, then my son, for his birthday, I again had no idea. It was the first birthday I had missed. But they pulled him into that. And so it was really, really special. And kudos to the producers and the executives who decided to make that happen. That was really heartfelt for me.
So many heartfelt and special moments this season. And frankly, what I think has made this season in particular so good is you have all of these men genuinely rooting for one another, even though you're all fighting for the same woman, right? But there's all this camaraderie and patting each other on the back and wishing each other congratulations when you get the one-on-one dates and all that other stuff. Was there any sort of nervousness knowing you're going into this thing with 23 other guys? Are we all going to get along? And looking at it now, is everything as genuine as it seems to us watching it back?
Well, I got to be honest with you. I never even thought about that part of it. And, it was great because we all just gelled. I can't really put a word to the magic that took place and the blessing that we all inherited as a result of the relationships that were established. So it was really special, and we were even, wishing each other good luck on our dates, and we're very kind and respectful when it was our turn to go and pull Joan away. It was really, really special. And the thought never crossed my mind or any of our minds, from what I can tell, about any bad or ill will feelings toward the other guys on their dates.
Did you feel like Joan put you in the friend zone too early? I mean, was there no way to fight your way out of that? And looking back, with the men that you know, do you think that there is someone there that's right for her, and who would that be?
Okay, so the friend zone thing, it never even crossed my mind. I was, as I mentioned earlier, I was there on a spiritual journey for myself, and obviously looking to see if there was a connection. But if there wasn't, I wanted to make sure that we would be able to get along and be good friends. Friend zone, it never even crossed my mind, because that's just the kind of person I am. Being friendly and kind and caring and loving. And I hope that came out with my prayer that I wrote for her mom,
which was awesome, by the way.
It was beautiful.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
so and with all the guys, it was one of those things. So the friend zone, you can call it what you want. I looked at it as something that was a lot closer and more important than just regular friends. It was a special experience, and now we're all connected in that way.
Definitely a special bond. But the second part was, which of the guys, if you had to pick, would be the right pick for her?
Yeah, so I think that Chuck probably has the emotional connection with her because of the passing of his mom, which was so moving for all of us. And him coming back, they have an emotional connection. I also think that Guy has a good connection with her, and Guy got a chance to go and sit down and make dinner with her, or something that she enjoys doing with cooking. So I think it's Chalk and Guy in terms of the connection that I think will work.
Okay.
Yeah, he's right along with us.
Yep.
Yeah, we're all on the same page here. Yeah.
You're all in the same boat on that one?
Yeah. And it's not taking on any water yet, Gary, so we're feeling good about it.
Let's see. There's so much more to come, so let's see.
Let's see what happens.
I know. When you were leaving, Gary, when you were talking about this journey, you had said that Joan made you feel like you mattered. And there's a lot of talk about, especially with the golden part of this franchise, where there's visibility. And when you get to a certain age, a lot of times people feel invisible. Talk to me about, for you, what the message of this show is kind of like putting out there, and what you want people who are watching, to take away from it, of all ages.
Well, I first of all think that it's never too late to find love. I think that we all want to be loved. We all want to give love. And for me, it truly was, I'm always giving. I'm a giving person just naturally. So when someone gives back and fills up my tank, it's a great feeling, when you say you matter. And when someone tells me that I matter, it's a wonderful feeling. But the most important thing is knowing that there's always hope on the horizon. Don't ever give up hope. Keep hope alive. And it's closer than you think. So never lose sight of someone that's coming into your life, because the possibilities are there, and it can and it will happen. So that's my take on that.
A great take and a great message, Gary. And I know a lot of the guys in the house feel the same way that you do. I'm always curious, when you're not having a date and there's no group date and you guys are all just hanging out, we saw you guys in the pool and barbecuing and making breakfast. Like what's an average day like at the mansion if it's not your turn to have a date? I mean, are you guys playing shuffleboard there? I mean, what's going on at the mansion?
Well, one of the things is trying to get rest, because at night, with the snoring and the guys getting up and using the bathroom and the little cots and the beds that we had to sleep on, it's quite uncomfortable. You're used to being in those California Kings and rolling over in your own environment. So most of the time it was just resting or laying in the sun or getting in the pool and in the jacuzzi and finding out what each guy is like and where they're from and talking about their families. I thought one of the more interesting moments for me at the mansion was the synchronized swimming. And
wait a minute, the what?
Was there a show?
This was not part of what we've seen so far. You guys did some synchronized swimming.
Oh my gosh, we did this little vignette of synchronized swimming. Kind of like what Captain Kim's song was.
Yeah, right.
Oh my gosh.
Some of the guys says, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to do secret swimming. So, it was just doing little fun stuff like that. There were little weights there. We could lift weights and exercise, but for the most part, it was resting. It was resting from not being able to sleep at night.
A lot of people have wishes for a golden bachelor in paradise. Is that something you would ever consider being a part of? And I don't know if you saw Gary, the Golden Bachelor season, but is there anyone from his season that you'd like to talk to or meet or would hope would show up in a scenario like that?
Well, I think the Golden Bachelor in Paradise would be a lot of fun. Anytime you can go and walk on a beach with someone that you care about is, that's always been a dream of mine, is traveling globally and putting my feet in the sand on the beach. So I think that'd be a lot of fun. I have not singled out anyone in particular from Gary's show. Although, let's see, there may be someone who is closer than I think that's right around the corner. So stay tuned with Gary and his finding someone along my journey. So.
How about that? Well, we know you have to go. We don't want to leave on this cliffhanger. Are you dating someone now? Is that what you're saying? And what are you looking for being out in the dating world?
Well, I'm not really looking. I think it's important that someone be equally yoked with me and my faith. So it's coming. I know it's coming, and it's closer than I could possibly imagine. So I'm going to leave it at that.
Well, we're excited for you, my friend, and the smile on your face, those of you watching our podcast, says it all. Ear to ear grin here from Gary. Thank you so much for being here, man, and we look forward to hearing more about you down the road. Enjoy the rest of your time out there in California, and again, we can't thank you enough for coming on the show.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me, and never forget, guys, how much you matter. And lots of people need you. So keep doing what you do.
That's why you're one of the fan favorites, Gary. We love you, buddy. Thanks for coming on.
God bless.
When I see you at Mental Hall, I need to give you a hug. That was so beautiful.
That was great. Well, if we had any doubts about if Gary was as real as he was on the show, no doubts. Dude's amazing.
I think that's something we found with the people we've been fortunate enough to speak with. The guys are who the guys are. They really were their true selves on this show, which is just why people find it so refreshing.
Gina, what was your biggest takeaway about all the things that he said?
I mean, he's just lovely. And I love his whole thing is you matter. I love the positive message that he puts out there. And it's something that we've seen, obviously, from a lot of these guys. This experience has changed them for the better. Yeah. And I'm just so happy for them. I can't wait to... Hopefully, I do see him at Mental Hall, and we get to chat with him again. He's a great guy.
Mental Hall is just around the corner. In the meantime, we've gone from 7 down to the final 4. Dun, dun, dun.
Every episode lately, a lot big cuts happening.
Big cuts. Yeah, Joan's just mowing them down left and right, just getting right to the bottom of this, trying to find the love of her life. And listen, this episode, another tearjerker, so many emotional moments. Again, just tugging at the heartstrings, which is what we've loved so much about this season. I love that the episode started with Pascal in his tighty whities, doing some ironing. It's nice to see that he's finally doing the household chores himself.
Yeah, the evolution is happening.
Yeah.
He's learning.
Well, he didn't have a choice.
He didn't have a choice.
Everybody left.
He's like, I got the whole room to myself. I thought that was great.
The guys
All his friends who were doing his laundry are gone.
Yeah, right.
lonely in there.
Well, listen, Pascal, we'll get to him in a second. He is one of the final four. Keith gets the one-on-one date right off the bat after that awkward driveway date where he was sweating all over himself and couldn't answer the questions. Keith had a bad night. We've all been there before. But I thought he made up for it with this one-on-one date.
And I think he had the cards a little stacked against him even during this because they met up with that lovely couple at the winery. And they mentioned they've been married for 32 years, right?
Right.
And Joan was married to John for 32 years. And that I mean, it just brought out the tears in her a bit, and it really made her get in her feelings. And I thought he did a good job of talking her through it and kind of bringing the date back to them. So that was good.
Yeah, you could see kind of the emotional shift in her eyes, like when she was talking about it, and it was like, oh, Joan. But here's the thing about Joan, as you can see, she's so resilient, and she realizes kind of like where she's at and what the stakes are. And she was like, no, I need to be present. And she and Keith had a nice little connection. This date was sweet.
Yeah, he talks about his ex-wife's addiction and raising his 3 daughters and how he'd love for her to come back to San Jose to meet the family and saying all the right things. Did we think it was interesting that there were no roses handed out? Because that typically, again, you guys are more well-versed as our Bachelor insider and Bachelor expert in the history of this show. I can't recall a time where there were no roses for one-on-ones and or group dates.
Yeah, I think it was sort of, I wondered in my head if it was sort of a last chance for Keith and Mark to make an impression where she didn't really want to be on the hook to give them a rose or not give them a rose.
That's a good point, because then she's tied to someone.
Yes.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I think she said, I want to give all the guys a fair chance to have another conversation, talk with me, and I can just decide amongst all of them. I have a fair level playing field as much as it could be.
Gina, you agree with that line of thinking?
Yeah. And even the guys picked up on it. It's like, okay, yeah, the playing field is leveled. As we're going to just keep throwing our
yeah, if they would have said playing the field was level, it would have been so much better. But
yeah, I know. Sorry. It is what it is. But I do feel like even they felt it, like, okay, we're all in the same spot here. And, we'll see how it plays out. It's really not up to us at this point. It's up to Joan.
And we had another emotional moment after that date with the hummingbird. Mark, compares it to his wife and how or makes him think of his wife. Yeah, it was a sign from above, kind of, that his wife used to have a hummingbird eat out of her hand, which is incredible to think about.
Yeah.
And he gets emotional again with these guys. And, I feel like every single one of these guys, as we've gotten down to the final 10 or 11, has had some sort of emotional moment. And this was Mark's. And again, like, as Gary was talking about, all the guys just kind of rallying around this person and picking them up and trying to get him back in the right frame of mind. And I thought that was one of the cool parts of this episode.
It really was. And I think for him to have that support, and even before he goes on his one-on-one date, they give him like a pep talk, which I just loved.
Right. That was cool.
Like, I don't think anyone wants someone else to win over themselves, but I don't think they want to win in the wrong way. And they know that Joan's smart. She's going to choose who's right for her. And they can't really do anything to change that. It is what it is. The right person's going to be the right person.
But that also is what kind of sets the Golden franchise apart from, the regular Bachelor, Bachelorette season. These guys have all had insane life experiences. And it does feel like they know that it's better to be supportive than be a jerk about things.
Right.
Like the guy, like it just feels so much more competitive when it's the Bachelor, the Bachelorette and the younger, people that are on the show. Like it's competitive in a way that's just so far different than what we have. Look, they're all, hoping to be the one in the end.
Sure.
But I do feel like with the younger folks, it's like a competition. And, with the golden folks, it is more like Gary has said, like some of the other, that it's a journey. It's a journey for them to kind of like get them to another place in their lives.
That's well put. Although we can picture if Sam had a breakdown, Devin coming up and patting him on the back and kind of carrying
Not one bit.
Yeah,
Not one
I
bit.
don't think that would have
even
happened.
some of the other guys too, even the younger, like some of the younger ones, that weren't the more competitive ones. I don't know. It doesn't feel like, at least on the show, that they were as supportive as these guys are and that we see more of.
No, and that's one of the things, to Gina's point, that makes this so great and why it's become so popular, the Golden franchise. And the group dates, just as they are in the regular Bachelor franchise, are still just as fun. They go bowling on the group date. And much like we see with the Bachelor and Bachelorette, Chalk kind of stealing time and the guys getting annoyed. So some things remain true no matter what part of the franchise you're in. And we saw that in this bowling episode.
Yeah, and I loved how Guy was like, wow, he positioned himself very well.
Yes, he did.
And it's like, maybe, I think they had the perspective of like, well, I didn't think of it, but, and,
Right.
and I liked that he tried privately to ask him, hey, give some of the guys and me a chance to talk to her. And Chalk just was like, well, sorry. And he didn't care. And we have a clip of that.
Let's see the clip.
I'm very much looking forward to just having some time with Joan.
Good looking. Can I just take you home?
As we're bowling, it is clear that Chalk positioned himself well and was sitting right next to her.
There you go.
I like you, character.
It's so much more comfortable.
It was in your face. Chalk and Joan together like a couple.
They did walk around like through the grapevines.
I don't care what they're thinking, they're doing. I'm just worried about Joan and myself.
Gina, what was your take on that whole situation?
Well, here's the thing. That is one of the points where I was like, oh, maybe we are going to see a little come out. But we didn't. They were so mature about it. You know what I mean? They were like, obviously they asked Chalk to be like, whatever. But Chalk's like, look, the way I see it, this is my girl, and I get that. He's in a different mindset right there. He's just like, this is mine to lose, essentially.
Do we think
that's how he feels? I do feel like their connection kind of shows that, though. She feels just as connected to him as he does to her.
I mean, I thought she played it very well in the bowling alley where he had his arm around her and she was still kind of closed off. She didn't want to like show up the other guys, basically. Like she was still playing it cool, if you will.
Classy.
She's very classy, very regal, very elegant, and she was kind of playing her cards close to the vest. Do you think, and this is me being devil's advocate, do you think this season needs a little bit of the cattiness? Not to the level that we saw on The Bachelor, but would it give it a little more oomph if there wasn't just so much of the, oh, we're all so happy for everybody, kumbaya type thing? Do we need I see Gina shaking your head, but I want to get Jen's thoughts on this. Do you think we need just a little bit of The Bachelor that we love so much?
This is going to make me sound like a bad person.
No,
but
not at all.
Okay. So one of the guys was like, I think it was Jonathan, was like, oh, Guy and Chalk, they might go at it later, but they didn't. And I was like, oh, I kind of wish they would say something to each other.
Right.
Like,
it's almost
dude,
too nice.
Like, I mean, because we knew that Guy felt a certain way, right?
Right.
He was a little upset, but he held it in because he seems nice, and he was trying to act in a mature manner. But I think Chalk was a bit bold, and we see it again. I mean, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but when Mark's about to go on his date, he's right next to Joan and Mark on the couch, and his arm is like
yes,
this.
that's a very good observation.
Yeah, and I feel like he's very big on this arm move.
Chalk is like, this is my girl, back the hell up.
It's very territorial, and I don't think Joan hates it though. I think she likes seeing a man be a man, and she likes a bold move. So
I would agree. Gina, what's your take on all this?
Well, you already know. For me, I enjoy the love story part of this. I don't need the drama. I feel like it's compelling enough as we're watching. So for me, I'm good without like the guys getting petty. I feel like they don't need that. That's just my take. As for Chalk, I do feel like that might just be how he is in general, where he'll like sit on a couch and like put his arm out. Like even if nobody's there, I do feel like that's probably him and the way he is. But it is definitely noticeable. I noticed for sure the same thing, Jen, when when Joan came in for Mark's date, and she came in and sat down with them for a little while, and Chalk was like right there, and then put his arm around her, like, there's our guy. Like, yeah. He's,
and that brings us to Mark's one-on-one date. And I want to go back to something that Jen just said about how Joan wants a man to like make this move and like kind of take charge. And poor Mark, I think he was a victim of circumstance in the sense that he was the last date, the last person to get a one-on-one.
That's a tough spot to be in.
And especially when she's already, I felt, kind of made up her mind because she has feelings for all these other guys. And Mark was in a way playing catch-up. And we've talked about this too on this show, how they can edit things to kind of make it seem a certain way, and maybe it's not as bad as we thought. But kind of like that awkward silence when the boat was leaving and going out into the open water from the marina. And they're just kind of like looking out and nobody's really saying anything. And I actually paused the episode and thought to myself, I'm like, oh boy, Mark is in an uphill battle here at this point, because you see this camaraderie and this chemistry that she has with these other guys. And Mark, I just felt like right from the jump, it just wasn't there. But going back to your point, Jen, when they asked the question in the scavenger hunt about I love you, and who says it first, and Mark says, well, I want to hear it second, and Joan also said that she wanted to hear it second. And right then and there, she probably thought, well, if this guy is not going to tell me that he loves me, and I have to tell him first. Now, granted, Mark has been through so much, and we can't even begin to compare to that situation and what he's gone through. But I think in that moment, right then and there, she was like, this is probably not the guy for me.
A little too laid back.
Little too laid back. And they've been through this same journey together, right? They both lost their loved ones, and they spend most of the time just talking about that and not so much about their future together. It was just more about their past. And I feel like that's what she said. She says, you're not ready to take the next step in this journey like I am. I don't feel like you're ready.
Yeah.
And I think that was kind of what she was getting at, and she noticed that throughout the date. And when she went home and said she didn't sleep, and then it dawned, what did she say? She had like a moment of clarity in the morning, and it came to her. I think that's what she came to.
Yeah, that was so tough. And I was kind of worried when they delivered that letter from Jesse that it was going to be like sleep on the boat and have a fantasy right now.
Jesse,
and
he likes to spice things up.
I was like, oh no, he's not ready. He's not ready for this.
I saw it differently. I saw it as like, it's like a little bit of a Hail Mary. Like, here's a moment like, all right, if things start to go bad, let's do this to like make it, to steer it in a different direction. And that was kind of like, it was a big help, because at that moment when they were doing the scavenger hunt, like he opened up, he lit up, he was much more, they had so much more fun. That conversation originally just felt so, in the non-conversation, it did feel like it just felt so uncomfortable. Yes. I felt horribly for them.
I know.
For both of them, because I do feel like Joan was really happy to see him come out of that limo with Kelsey, and I think she really wanted something to happen there. And, and it just, I think when it wasn't working, I do feel like she felt bad about it.
On this show, you need to seize on the opportunities when they're presented to you. A one-on-one date is one of those opportunities, right? And if she's showing interest in you, you have to be willing to make the move. You have to be willing to put yourself out there. And I think he's a little cautious. And I think he had a lot of pressure on himself with being the final date.
Yeah, of course.
And he has it probably in his head. Can I gain all this ground? But he had been like kind of laying the groundwork with asking her to kiss her and all those kind of little moments they had. So he wasn't in the friend zone. And I hope I didn't offend Gary with that.
You didn't.
Because
you just cut right to the chase.
I mean, but I think she, with their conversations, she saw him as a friend. Mark, I'm referring to, but and also romantic, but not enough. Like there was no like, let's get away together in the other room. With like, I feel like she would have been like that with Chalk or Guy. Where they would have been like, let me steal you away, Joan. You're so breathtaking. Like it's just, I think he was just a little more reserved.
And how much of that, Gina, is it him maybe not being ready? He was questioning himself before he saw the hummingbird. Like, am I doing the right thing? Should I be here? How much of it was that? How much was it being the last date? Combination of the two? What do you think?
I think it's definitely a combination of the two. I mean, look, Mark, when we first met him, we saw him in this way where, I mean, he was still just very emotional when he would talk about his wife and the family and the loss and all that when, Kelsey brought Joey home at that hometown. And everyone fell in love with him because he was that vulnerable and open. And so, of course, all of the conversation was, we got to have him. We got to see more of this man. We got to get him, get somebody to make him happy and, all of that. When it came on, I think you're never really prepared for exactly how this journey is going to go and how it's really going to be when you're in it. And I think that, maybe he did have some second thoughts. I will say, producers, the foreshadowing in this entire episode was like, I mean, it was anvils all over the place. I mean, from the very beginning, I was like, oh man, they're talking way too much about Mark and this date and you're going to go to hometowns. And I was like, this is not going to end well. I was so afraid. As I was like, oh, this does not, it doesn't sound promising.
It's a bummer not to see Kelsey and Joey.
Yeah, that would have been cool.
Yeah.
And then, she comes back the next day and that's when she pulls him aside and, tells him, I thought that was nice that she didn't, wait till the rose ceremony to do that and gave him some proper context in terms of why she came to this decision out of her love and respect for him.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was a great moment. And then he comes in and tells the guys what happened, and he's like, I'm going home. And you know what? There was a look on Chalk's face that he was disappointed.
He's happy.
He was happy.
I think if he had been bolder, right?
Meeting Mark.
Yes. I think that he could have been like a final two person. Yeah. Like, I really do. And I think Chalk's kind of knew that, and he knew this guy had Bachelor history already involved.
He was a threat.
So he's a front runner right out of the limo.
Yeah,
okay. So I think he's like, phew, that one's out of the way.
Yeah, there was a little bit of that.
Respects him as much as he does, I'm sure.
Gina, is that how you saw it?
I mean, it's possible. I mean, I didn't notice the Chalk smile. There's one thing I did not.
There was a look. I don't know if it was a smile. You could read the facial expression. He was not disappointed.
But I think for, as we've seen in talking to all of these guys, it's like a double-edged sword where, when they see people go home, it's like that's their brothers leaving and it's sad for them. But on the other hand, like, especially now as we're getting close, I'm sure it is a sigh of relief for Chalk, for Guy, for Jordan.
Not Pascal.
Well, Pascal's a different breed altogether.
And I love him.
I loved it. I loved that he had such a bond and they had like
he's
my friendship.
Yeah, he's like, he was my best friend. And he's hugging and getting upset.
If we get anything out of this, at least we've got a nice bromance between them.
We started with Pascal in his underwear, and then we end with him in tears. I mean, it was quite a full circle moment.
Look at the emotions for him. I mean, that was something.
So the rose ceremony comes. Now we're down to 6 because Mark leaves. I thought, and I'll be curious to see what you guys thought. Before the final 4, you're going in your head, you're like, okay, who's going home? I thought it was Jonathan, and for some reason I thought it was going to be Guy. Because I thought Keith kind of saved himself in that one-on-one date, and I thought she said something about how he makes her feel comfortable and safe, and I thought that was very important, and they kind of had they talked about what their day-to-day life would be. So I thought it was going to be Guy and Jonathan going home. Who did you think?
I think it ended up the way I thought, and I was wondering if Jonathan might be able to pull it off over Jordan, but she does really seem to like him.
She likes Jordan.
Yeah, I mean, I was torn, but I was surprised. Mark, Keith, 2 one-on-one dates, no rose for either of them.
Right.
And Gina, I can't remember the last time that the final 2 one-on-one guys, it's not uncommon for one of those to go home, maybe, but for both, no roses. I was a little surprised, and then I was like, well, there it goes back to the no roses on the dates thing. Maybe this was something that she kind of was like, well, we'll see if one of these guys shows me something I haven't seen yet, but maybe they're the ones that I'm not ready to be with.
Yeah, I mean, and it's interesting because all the guys that are left, I mean, everybody had a one-on-one. So, like, Mark was literally the last guy.
Mm-hmm.
And so to see, her, like, go in her head talking, thinking through, like, all right, let's really see who I can be with, who I see my future with, who I see, like, going through this next chapter of my life with. I think she really, really takes that seriously.
Yeah.
We saw that a lot. Like, I mean, if you go back, not necessarily, I mean, all the Bachelor, all the leads really do take it seriously. But, like, I remember Charity saying, like, she had a list. Every time one of them, like, would say something that really meant something to her, she would write it down so she was very clear-eyed in how she was making her decisions. I feel like, and I know Joan has said she talked to Charity. She talked to a bunch of, alumni, Bachelor Nation people about how to kind of approach, going in as the lead. And Charity was one of them. And I just wonder, I do feel like she's definitely being very, very calculated in her decisions. She's doing it to make sure that, like, they don't get hurt, but also that she doesn't.
And you know what? I thought she had a great conversation, speaking of Bachelorette alums, with Trista to start the episode. That was a great conversation. And Trista was like, even with Ryan, who she picked, I never told him how I felt. And all these years later, I'm still mad at myself. I thought that was that was a good reveal. I thought that was something very interesting.
Oh my goodness. I wanted to talk to Trista because she's been on this journey, and I think I could really use some advice from her.
You have 7 great guys, from what I hear.
Yeah, I do. But I have to figure out how you go all in.
I get in my head a lot.
Oh,
I'm very analytical.
Right now.
You can't be in your head. Like, my biggest regret is that I didn't share more.
Oh.
That I wasn't as vulnerable with Ryan and didn't share that I was falling in love with him because he shared that with me and I didn't give that to him. And my biggest regret.
So he was wondering.
He was.
I need to open up more, but it's hard when you have more than one person that you have feelings about.
So the final 4, Pascal, who, by the way, I have to give myself some flowers. Right from the jump, you two thought he did not have a chance, and now he's down to the final 4. And here we are. My man Pascal, still Pappy Le Pew, still living to see Pascal the Rascal, Pappy Le Pew, still living to see another day. Chalk, Guy, and Jordan are the final 4, and the trailer for next week, Hometowns, looks great.
I always love hometowns. Those are my favorite dates. I just love getting an inside look at their family, the way they live their lives, who they spend their time with. I just think it's great.
And, and the golden, hometowns are, they hit different a little bit.
Yeah.
Where, you really do see, like, how, like, the lead will see how they fit into the lives of their final 4. And for Joan, I think it's going to be a really eye-opening experience. I can't wait to watch.
Who's your final 2 guys?
Ooh, well, after was that Pascal driving a Ferrari and he revved the engine? She was like, ooh. I think she likes listen. I think she likes all these guys for the right reasons, no question about it. But I think she likes the fact, thinking about what her life could be like with Pascal, because now her kids are all grown up. They have grandkids. She has grandkids. Her family's great. Her mom is now in better health, and she wants to kind of live it up now in her 60s. And I think Pascal, with the way he lives, kind of offers her a really fun way to live out the second half of her life, is kind of what I think. And not to say that that's why she likes him. I think she likes him as we saw him in Las Vegas. We got to really learn about Pascal the man and his journey.
Sure. And
we saw another side of him getting emotional when Mark left. I think there's something there. I think he's going to be one of the final 2.
I worry because they showed us a preview of some kind of confrontation. He's like, she's not all right when the cameras are following them.
Yeah, but I don't think that was at Hometowns, though.
Yeah, I don't know.
That might have been at because that trailer last week was for the whole season.
That could be the very end. We have no clue.
We don't know.
But I guess my top two, if I was picking for her, would be Chalk, I think, because she seems to really like him. And I like Jordan. He's kind of like my dark horse. I don't know. What do you think, Gina?
Chalk for sure. I mean, I do feel like if he's not the final one, like he's the final two for sure. The second one, I kind of go back and forth between Guy and Pascal for those reasons that Ryan was talking about. She does want to, I think she does see this man who self-made, who came here, as he told her on that date, like who came here with nothing and really built this life for himself. And I think that she, and he really just enjoys the finer things in life and likes to have a lot of fun. And I think that means a lot. I think all of those things mean a lot to her.
Yeah.
But the connection with Chalk it's pretty undeniable. When you see them, I mean, with him, you see him light up. With her, it's the same thing. You do see her kind of get this interesting smile when she talks about him, when she's there with him, when, all of these things. So I think he's probably the one. But Guy too. I don't know.
I think we've seen her head over heels.
Final two.
I don't think we've seen her head over heels. But I agree with you. I agree with you about Chalk. Let me ask you this. Do you think Chalk is a little bit too much of the pick me guy right now? They showed that the clip in the trailer for next week. Is this real? Like he's almost like, I don't think he's enjoying the journey. He's just like so much about like, pick me, let's do this, let's be done. And I almost feel like he's becoming too much like Devin in that way. I think so.
I think I'll bring that guy up again.
Listen, I don't think Chuck is at all insecure in his everyday life. But I think this whole process is making him a little insecure because she's going with these other guys and he knows how he feels about her. But I think it's kind of affecting him that his calm and cool approach has now become a little bit over the top. That's my view from the
inside. I don't want him to go too overboard either. I worry that he's getting like, I don't know. I might get a little annoyed if he's too forward in front of the other guys if I were her. Just because I'd be like, don't put me in that awkward position.
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't know. We'll see how she handles it. I mean, they're not really going to do any more group dates. So I mean that
was it.
That aspect.
The bowling date was the last group date.
Yeah. So
from now on, it's one-on-ones with everybody.
And Ryan, there was an article.
I was just about to say. Speaking of dates, Fantasy Suites. Joan had an interview with Us Weekly, and then, of course, it became a big thing on Page 6 here in New York City because it involves, fantasy suites and sex and all that stuff, which, of course, sells on Page 6. And for the first time ever in the history of this franchise, there were no beds for the fantasy suites. Now, get your mind out of the gutter before you say anything else.
Say what you
the
say
both of you leaned into the microphone just now.
It was
David had a big smile on his face. This sly dog over here in the corner. You got to pay attention to those people. It's not what you think. She moved the beds away because she wanted them to have an emotional connection, emotional conversation. She even said they did not spend the night. Her quote was, in Page 6, "I'm not a person who can have a physical relationship with more than one person. I wanted it to be agreed that we would talk and have the conversation we need to have off camera. We did not spend the night together. There was no bed in the room." So I thought this was an interesting approach. She also added, you got to think the person you're potentially ending up with probably doesn't want to think of you last week having slept with the guy he hangs out with. It's just weird. And she said this not critiquing anybody in previous Bachelor journeys, how they approached it, but that's just how she wanted to approach it. So I am curious to the ladies on this podcast. I give the floor to you and your thoughts on this.
I think it's very interesting, and I think it's very mature, and she's 100% right. I mean, but also, I don't know. I might want all of the time. I might want to get to know the person and see what they look like in the morning.
Well, how do I make breakfast?
Yeah, do they make some nice eggs? I don't know.
But listen, real talk? Isn't that part of being in a relationship, Gina? Don't you need to know like what the physical intimacy is like? Don't you want to know what the next morning is like? Isn't that all part of choosing who your partner is going to be?
Of course, but I do feel like, but I get where she's coming from, where in this situation, she doesn't feel comfortable with, sleeping with all three guys. And you know what? That's fair. And I appreciate her point on that. But again, as we've all said, this particular, when journey to finding your person is not your typical one. So you're not like it's not like Goldilocks and the Three Bears where you're sleeping with 3 guys in a bed or like different beds to see like, who fits best. When you're dating someone in real life, you're dating one person, and then if it works in that way, it works. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. But I get where she's coming from. And, I appreciate her thoughts on it. I will say that I have a conversation with Joan that will be coming up. And you'll be hearing some of it next week.
Nice.
A little bit on this. We touch on a lot of things. And so you'll be hearing more from Joan about a lot of things.
You know what, though? Good for her for doing what she's comfortable with.
Yes.
I'm glad she wasn't pressured to do anything that she didn't want to do.
My only regret is
exactly
as it should be.
It's her journey.
Yeah.
And I
maybe a future bachelorette or bachelor will even do this. You never know.
You know what? I think it should be straight abstinence on this show going forward. You heard it here first.
The guy who wants drama all the time.
Listen, listen, the abstinence is going to add to the drama. Trust me. It is definitely going to make things a little more feisty around the dates.
I have one more question because Gina and I were discussing this. Going back to Mark and the other eliminated gentleman, and do we think that, there was a lot of people that thought Mark would make a great Golden Bachelor someday. Do we think he's not ready for that? Do we think he's too quiet? Or do we think that maybe now he's got some confidence? Maybe they can spur him on a journey? What do you think? I would still love to see it.
I think Mark would be a great Golden Bachelor. And I also think after all of this journey and what we've seen in Kelsey's season, I don't think he will have any trouble getting a date with any woman that he wants. He has a very calming presence. He's just a very, very good guy.
Yeah.
And he's clearly been through a lot from an emotional and personal standpoint. And frankly, I hope he's the next Golden Bachelor.
What about Jonathan? Right? I think your pick was Jonathan, was it?
Well, no. Well, I said the only reason that I mentioned Jonathan is because like in the limo or his car ride when he was leaving, he mentioned something that like his journey is only beginning.
Yeah.
So I'm like, that sounds like code for maybe he's going to be the next Golden Bachelor. That was all.
He would be good, too. My only regret with the fantasy suite, no beds, was that I thought that it was supposed to be sponsored by Viagra, and now it's just that whole sponsorship just fell by the wayside, unfortunately, for that episode.
No.
Disappointing.
By the way,
that wasn't true? That's not, I was misinformed?
No.
See, this is why you two are here to reel me in. Sometimes I hear things through the grapevine. They aren't true.
Yeah, no, or you just make things up in your head.
All right, just make things up.
By the way, before the season began, Joan mentioned that on The View about the fantasy suites. So this is something that I think Us Weekly expanded on a little bit with her because they could talk to her more about it. But she did mention it in the beginning. So we've kind of known from the beginning that this was going to be a journey like no other, that Joan was really just like making her own rules and being able to do things her way.
Fantasy Suites in 2 weeks, Hometowns next week. And if you like our Bachelor podcast, what do you need to do, Jen?
Like and follow.
Please do that. We're having a good time growing the audience, and it's been a great journey for us so far here on Playing the Field, and we can't thank you enough for being along for the ride. As always, for Gina and Jen and Gary, who we were so thankful that he joined us, I'm Ryan. Thank you so much for being here, and we will see you next week for another episode of Playing the Field.